Right. We have about a minute to go. Twenty seconds to go.
Thank you for keeping time.
Yeah. Law and Society Alliance, we start our programs on time.
Sure,
So,
sure.
But it is based on my time on the computer.
Okay, okay, sure.
Yeah. So let's start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar of Law and Society Alliance, which is a Delhi-based think tank. Today, we will be covering Falun Gong, oppression and human rights violations by Communist China. This is a very important topic because there have been several misinformation, propaganda, and vilification of Falun Gong practitioners by Communist China in the last at least 3 decades now. Falun Gong practice became globally known after a crackdown on the practitioners by Communist China in the late 1990s, when the Communist China was under the leadership of Jiang Zemin, the then General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. At that time, China alone had about 70 million Falun Gong practitioners, and those practicing the spiritual path were put through forced ideological conversion by Communist China, which has always maintained the doctrine of state atheism. I'm sure all of us know about it. A multifaceted propaganda campaign characterized by Communist Party crackdown on Falun Gong. Actually, multifaceted propaganda actually characterized the Communist Party's crackdown on Falun Gong in China. It is also involved in a program of enforced ideological conversion and re-education and reportedly a variety of extra-legal coercive measures such as arbitrary arrest, forced labor, physical torture, you name it, all of that was perpetrated on the Falun Gong practitioners by Communist China. Because of the crackdown, this actually resulted in the death of several Chinese citizens who were practicing Falun Gong spiritual path. Yet, there are several questions that remain in the minds of the people, both inside and outside Communist China, about what is Falun Gong all about. What is the spiritual practice? Is it very similar to the yogic practice of the Hindus in India? Why did Communist China crack down on Falun Gong specifically? Why did Communist China characterize this practice as some evil sect? What happened to the Falun Gong practitioners and what is the current status of this practice and the practitioners globally? These are some of the questions that we'll try and answer in this particular webinar that we are doing today. We have four eminent personalities who are also Falun Gong practitioners, Falun Dafa practitioners here today as speakers. Let me introduce them to the audience before I call them to speak. The first speaker is Venus Upadhyay, who is a senior journalist. Who is a senior journalist with Epoch Times, and she closely tracks Communist China and its happenings. Venus is a very personal friend of mine and has been in the profession for a very long time. She started as a sub-editor with the New Indian Express in Kochi and has her writings published in several newspapers, including the Sunday Magazine of the Hindu and other media outlets. She's currently based in Delhi. She will explain to us what Falun Dafa is all about and what the spiritual practice means actually. Just a second, I have a technical issue here. 1 second. Just give me a minute. There is some technical issue with my computer. 1 second.
Sure.
This happens whenever I host a Chinese program on China. Okay. 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 I'm extremely sorry. There is a problem. 1 second. Okay. I'm back. So let us go back to our session. I have introduced Venus Upadhyay already. Next, we have Cynthia Sun. She's a lead researcher at the New York-based organization Falun Dafa Information Center. Her work explores persecution documentation, transnational persecution, and policy recommendations. Cynthia recently authored Surveillance, Slander, and Censorship, How the CCP Persecution Impacts Falun Gong Believers on US University Campuses. She will back a presentation today on the oppression and human rights violations of Falun Gong practitioners by Communist China with relevant data. Then we have Shelly Shaw. She came from China and settled in New Zealand about 25 years ago when the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners became unbearable. Shelly has worked for the Epoch Times from New Zealand for over 20 years. She has reported a lot of uncensored info about what happened in China. She's a Falun Gong practitioner, and she will share with us her personal experiences with Communist China and its crackdown on Falun Gong practitioners. We also have Bharat S. Valecha. He's a volunteer at the Falun Dafa Association of India, and he will share with us where the spiritual practice stands today globally. Bharat is an HR consultant from Bangalore, and he was very keen on spirituality right from his teens and has learned many spiritual disciplines. It was while pursuing his spiritual interest that he came across Falun Dafa, an ancient spiritual practice for body and mind. He has been practicing Falun Dafa for over 15 years now and spends a lot of time raising awareness about the inhuman persecution of the practitioners in China. Okay, so each speaker, these are the four speakers we have. Each speaker will get about 10 to 12 minutes to make their opening presentations, after which we'll take up question and answer session with the audience be able to ask some questions to them. Here are some administrative announcements before we go to the speakers. In case any of the audience has a question to ask, please type it out in the chat box, mentioning the speaker's name to whom you want it addressed. They will take it up as and when we get to the Q&A session. We also request the participants to keep their microphones mute while speakers are making presentations both as a mark of respect and also because we are recording this session. It will enable us to do a disturbance-free recording. If you face any bandwidth issues at the place where you are at your end, kindly keep your video cameras off. This is for the participants, not for the speakers. Please keep your camera off so that you can at least listen to the speakers much more clearly, while they are making their presentation, and there won't be any audio drops that usually happens in case there is a bandwidth issue. With that, let us listen to Venus for the next 10 minutes on what Falun Gong or Falun Dafa is all about. Venus, the time is yours.
Hello, everyone. Namaskar, ni hao. Hello to audiences from different parts of the world. Primarily, I think a lot of us would be from India, from different parts of India. So I'm a journalist, and I would spend about 5 minutes talking a bit about what was happening within China before Falun Dafa or Falun Gong was introduced. Why Falun Gong is important in the Chinese context, in the Chinese society, and in today's global context. And I will spend the next 5 minutes talking about my journey, how I got into it, what it means to me, what are the set of exercises, what it involves, what does it mean to be a Falun Gong practitioner. So to begin with, we all know that China is ruled by a single party, the Chinese Communist Party. And we all know that Mao, Mao is considered to be the, supreme leader in the history of the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, I would not go more into Mao's history or, the history of communism in China, but and whatever I'm sharing, a lot of this is referred to the book Slaughter by Ethan Gutman. The book is available on Amazon, both in print and in Kindle editions. It's an amazing book which can help you to understand the Chinese society, and Falun Gong in its context. So, following the death of Mao in 1976, people flooded into parks and squares across China looking for power, health, and a new mass experience. The Qigong boom was born. As the 1980s began, the idea that extraordinary powers were attainable quickly lost its transgressive reputation. News broadcasts, even scientific journals regularly reported to the Chinese public new claims of paranormal incidents. Just before that, a few decades before that, in 1949, a handful of Communist Party cadres had glanced at some old spiritual text and pulled out one word, Qigong, from two different texts, Qi and Gong. Qi meaning animating universal energy, life force, or simply breath, or you can call it pranic energy. Gong meaning the training, mastery, or discipline. Gong, it refers to the aspect of what in the Indian language you call sadhana or cultivation. So, and it is this term which is very important to be understood in the, in the context of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, because during the Cultural Revolution, everything that was sacred, that was spiritual, that was religious, was considered superstitious and backward, and therefore it was denounced, and therefore it was attacked. So it was because of that, in that context, that 1949, this word Qigong was coined as a new word for cultivation practices or energy practices, which became very popular. So Qigong thus became gradually in course of time, in those few decades, it became a potent hybrid of the Maoist mass campaigns of recent memory and the new consumer impulse that Deng Xiaoping was liberating with his market reform. So this is what Ethan Gutman writes in his book. Then came June 4th, 1989, with the Tiananmen massacre and the cultural rollback that followed. Popular enthusiasm about seemingly everything, even Qigong, seemed to simply deflate. Individual desire for health and power had been the carriage that transported the masses into China's parks and plazas to study Qigong. However, now there was a bit of a shift. Now, it was during this time, immediately after a few years after the Tiananmen Square massacre, that in 1992, Master Li Hongji, he started to give lectures around different parts of China, introducing Falun Gong or Falun Dafa to the public. So he gave about 30 lectures, teaching sessions in Changchun and Beijing, but he also taught in other major cities such as Wuhan, Guangzhou, Chongqing, and by all accounts, Lee's extended lectures, this is what Ethan writes, were showing a startling exponential increase in attendance by December 1993. But they were still intimate enough that for many practitioners, Mr. Gutman writes, the lectures provided a deeply personal experience. So in the mid-December 1993, the author mentions that a period of high workload before Chinese New Year, that was the time, but early on the morning of the 11th, a mad rush began swarming around the entrance to the 1993 Oriental Health Expo, the premier Qigong showcase of China. And Falun Dafa, Falun Gong, was a very popular, practice during this event. the China Qigong Science Research Society had officially accepted Falun Gong. Now, the China Qigong Science Research Society was a state-backed agency. It had officially accepted Falun Gong in September 1992. And Mr. Li Hongji, whom we call, who's popularly known as Master Li Hongji, he had received a nationwide permit to teach Falun Dafa. So this was a little context I wanted to give. My other panelists are going to talk about how the persecution started and when the persecution started. But I wanted to give a bit of this context about, what happened before the practice was introduced, how Qigong became very popular in the Chinese society, what was the political context at that point of time, and how Falun Gong started to be introduced. So there are two books of Falun Gong. One is Falun Gong. It's called by the same name, Falun Gong. And other is, there is another book, which is the main book, which is called Chuan Falun. So here you can see Chuan Falun this is the Hindi edition of Chuan Falun. You have it in English also, and you have it in other Indian languages. It is in Tamil, it is in Bengali, it is in Kannada, as far as I know as of now. So basically, Falun Gong consists of 5 major exercises. Qigong exercises are generally very slow, rhythmic movements. And Falun Gong consists of 5 exercises. So it's the first one is the Buddha stretching 1,000 hands. So it's it helps you to open your energy channels. The second one is the Falun standing stance. You can actually know about these exercises, and you can also do them at your place. They are available on YouTube. We can later on also provide some links. Or you can go to falundafa.org. You have content and material available in different languages. The basic book, that is Falun Gong, it also explains each exercise in detail. The 5th exercise is a meditation exercise where you sit cross-legged, what the Indians call Padmasana. So you sit cross-legged, and it's a very tranquil exercise. So this is basically a bit about Falun Gong. Now, coming to my personal journey, I am a journalist, and I am born in the northern region of India. I was born in the northern region of India, right on the border of India and Pakistan. And right from my childhood, I had a very rich traditional upbringing. I come from a very culturally rooted family of a big community, as it is in the case of many Indians even today. So my paternal side and my maternal side, we were a very close-knit family, very traditional, very culturally rooted. But I had lots of questions because I was living right on the border. I was seeing conflicting situations, contradicting situations. I had many questions about my existence. I had many questions about the way the world is happening. And I set off on my journey after college, after finishing college in Jammu. I set off on my journey, for education and for work in rest of the country. And as of now, I have, traveled to many parts of the country. I have worked and traveled around 1,000 villages, or maybe even more. I mean, I have lost count how many places I have gone across. So it was during one of my work stint in the coastal city, eastern coastal city of Pondicherry, the erstwhile French colony, that one day while strolling on the beach, I saw somebody meditating on the beach. And, generally meditation is something that I have been wanting to do for so long, but meditation doesn't happen by just sitting, and closing your eyes, because your mind goes in all directions. So what is meditation? There was a very sincere question in my head. And I saw this person sitting on the beach and meditating, and it struck me somewhere that she seems to be meditating, because the demeanor that she had, the vibe that she gave me was that she really seemed to be meditating. So it was just out of curiosity at that point of time in my life. I happened to chance upon a person like that, and I just started to do it, and it just happened. I mean, I just started to do it, and it felt very good. It gave me a different sense of calm and a different sense of a direction in my life. So the very important thing that Falun Gong taught me is that it taught me to live or orient or direct my life based on three principles of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, what in Hindi we call Satya, Karuna, and Sahanshilta. So based on these three principles and these five set of exercises, which I do every day, and based on these three principles, whenever I was facing anything in life, I started to direct my crisis as well as my opportunities, as well as anything I was encountering according to these three principles. And I started to enlighten to my own wisdom, to my own knowledge, to my own experiences coming out of this framework. And this is what it is. So I think it's already 10 minutes.
Thank you, Venus. I will now move on to Cynthia. Cynthia, as I've already introduced, she joins us from New York. It's a pleasure having her. So she will be talking more about the persecution and the human rights violations that have happened against Falun Gong in China. Cynthia, the time is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen real quick. Thank you for the introduction. It's an honor to be here with everyone at the Law and Society Alliance. And I'm actually personally a very big fan of the organization and the work that you guys have produced. I read the 2021 report, and that was actually when I was stepping into this field, going into human rights in New York. So I think the report and others like it have opened my eyes to a lot of what the CCP has done internationally. So since it's clear, I won't need to reiterate these points and the danger that the CCP poses. I'll dive right into the key trends of the persecution today. So this is just a quick photo I put together for when Venus was talking about the meditation that she was mentioning. And there's a sitting meditation on the bottom right. There's a standing meditation in the other four corners and the other three corners. And today, what I want to discuss actually, since there's so many facets to the persecution, I wanted to break it down into two parts. One is the inside China, like you mentioned before, and then we'll move on to outside mainland China. In the 90s, actually, some scholars said Falun Gong was a cultural blind spot for media and academics outside of China. And I would actually argue it remains a cultural blind spot today, but this is purposeful on the part of the CCP's censorship and narrative control, and we can get into that later. First, I wanted to share our documentation. So this is a bit of the background of really the core dates of when the persecution started. So in the early days, by 1999, the Chinese government itself estimated that there were at least 70 million to 100 million people practicing Falun Gong in China, more than the membership of the party at the time. And in June that year, on June 10th, the former then head of the CCP, Jiang Zemin, ordered the creation of an extra legal agency called the 610 Office after the day it was created. And it was given free rein to persecute Falun Gong. If any of you guys know the history of the Holocaust and the Gestapo, this was his Gestapo. He directed the 610 Office to eradicate Falun Gong in 3 months. That was his goal. And so in July, the next month, he initiated the eradication of Falun Gong, his own cultural revolution. And a lot of people actually ask me why. And it's a bit hard to envision because most people weren't there in the 90s to see the boom of Falun Gong. And I wasn't even born then. But in a lot of the speeches, Jiang Zemin actually mentions how much he feared its popularity and how Falun Gong had sparked the public to pursue traditional culture, including a belief in the divine, which the CCP had tried for decades to get rid of. According to insiders, Jiang Zemin took this as a personal vendetta. And so his directive turned Chinese society upside down overnight. Interestingly, in this period following his crackdown in July, many people in his own cabinet did not agree to the persecution and this religious genocide at first. But those sympathetic to Falun Gong were purged. And over a few years, through propaganda campaigns on television and a complete transformation of the legal system, this became sort of a pay to play. Bounties were put on people's heads. Policemen were rewarded handsomely if they could get local people to renounce their faith and sign, these contracts saying that they'll never meditate again. They'll never read the books of Falun Gong again. They'll never tell people about Falun Gong and the persecution, and they'll stay silent. And so it was really oppressive, like from all facets of society. In the first month alone, just to give people an example, the party mouthpiece, People's Daily newspaper, had published 347 articles demonizing Falun Gong. Military troops were dispatched to universities like Tsinghua, brandishing machine guns to enforce the new crackdown on campus and to prevent people from meditating on the campus quad, on the grass and the yard. And so this just gives you a semblance of what happened. And obviously in 2024, the persecution continues under Xi Jinping. Adults continue to be fired from their jobs if they're caught practicing Falun Gong. Children are expelled from schools. I've talked to many personally who have been orphaned by the persecution and have escaped to the United States through the UN refugee status. And even in America, Chinese diaspora say that their phones are under 24/7 surveillance and that consulates will visit them and pressure them to, stop attending appeals, even though they're not in China anymore. And so now that you know the timeline, this was actually a photo of one of the appeals in Tiananmen Square. In the first 2 to 3 years, there were hundreds of thousands who appealed in Tiananmen Square, and there was an appeal once a day at least. And this was one of them. So I wanted to show you the photo. So here are the numbers we have recently. Just as a preface, this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are the ones that we know the names of. We have photos of or family testimony and some sort of verdict in these cases. So we actually don't know the full scale of the persecution currently. But in 2022, there were 6,694 arrested or harassed. Similarly, last year, we had 6,500 arrested or harassed. And then this year, just the first 2 months alone, we've received over 300 reports of arrests and harassment cases. And after practitioners are arrested, in China, there's no really rule of law like there are in other countries. Trials are held without representation. Families are barred from visiting, and harsh sentences up to 19 years are doled out to practitioners who raise awareness about the persecution on TV or social media like Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok. And so now that, and the star that I have here, in 2022, we've also received reports of 3 million renminbi, which translated is $35 million rupees, that were extorted in total from Falun Gong practitioners. So police basically went into the house without a warrant, confiscated their belongings, confiscated cash, and asked for money, without court judgment, without anything. It was just a complete robbery of the citizens, basically. I wanted to touch upon torture in detention. So after practitioners are arrested, then they're sentenced, they actually face severe torture in detention. because the ultimate goal is to get them to renounce their faith. And many people find their spiritual practice something self-fulfilling and very precious. So most of them aren't willing to give up their faith. And afterwards, they face physical torture. Millions of people face long periods of detention or reform through labor, according to different reports by Amnesty International, the United Nations, the US State Department. And there are at least 100,000 cases of torture documented by minghui.org, which is a website where Chinese practitioners can report their abuse online and get it outside of the Great Firewall. Torture techniques include shocking with electric batons, burning skin with irons, force feeding, starvation, sleep deprivation, rape, and sexual torture. And this is very dark, but I just wanted to bring, I guess, like the reality to the numbers, because these are just, 6,000 people. But what do they face? Like, what are they up against, when they try to practice their faith? There's also high-tech surveillance, and this is something new under Xi Jinping. Under zero COVID lockdowns, a lot of digital surveillance tools like facial recognition and different social media tracking have been implemented. And so we have several digital surveillance tools, including Hikvision, which is like a ring camera or a surveillance camera used around the world, actually, not just in China. But at least 54 cases of detention have happened to practitioners after video surveillance caught them, passing out flyers to people or talking to people about the persecution and raising awareness. There was also an alarm feature developed. Usually in America, if there's gunshots, there will be like a citywide alarm to alert police. But in China, they have an alarm to alert police about Falun Gong believers, walking on the streets. The death toll has reached over 5,000 documented, and an estimated 60,000 to 100,000 per year potentially die as a result of forced organ harvesting, which I'll get into now. In 2019, this London tribunal, the final judgment said, quote, "Forced organ harvesting has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply." I don't know if people have heard about the forced organ harvesting issue in China, but it is state-sanctioned, state-run, and completely in compliance with the courts, the police, military hospitals, and surgeons. And in China, there's actually not really a sustainable organ donor system, because most Chinese people believe that if you donate your organs, if you go to the afterlife, you won't have organs. That's like a folk tradition. And so since it's very low, and they have millions of people in detention for their faith, they actually do reverse matching where they use that as an organ bank. They use these prisoners of conscience. So if you go to China, you can order an organ in advance. Say you're a patient and you say, next Thursday, can I get a heart? And that can't happen in most places, in most hospitals, because you don't know when a person's going to die. But in the case of China, Falun Gong practitioners are the source of that, and they're usually harvested live, which means they're still a living, breathing person when the transplant happens. I'll move on to transnational repression really quickly. The CCP's persecution obviously extends beyond China's borders, and as democratic governments have focused attention on countering this repression, they have engaged in more arrests, prosecutions, and undercover investigations of CCP officials and proxies in order to better protect the Falun Gong community. But this is just obviously the tip of the iceberg of all of the things going on, like physical assaults and censorship. These are just a few of the cases I've picked out around the world. In Canada, 2007, a Vancouver practitioner was meditating in front of the consulate. 3 people came out, held him at gunpoint, and threatened him to never come meditate again. United States, the past 2 years, an assailant was charged with 2 counts of felony for tearing down a Falun Gong booth. and assaulting Falun Gong practitioners volunteering at the booth. In Argentina, a CCP diplomat assaults Falun Gong practitioner in front of media. In the United Kingdom, booth was attacked. In Australia, a Falun Gong practitioner was assaulted. And I actually have some photos for these. This was the Argentina case. This was a CCP official. The diplomatic team is behind him on the left. And this is a Falun Gong practitioner in Argentina on the right. It says Falun Dafa on his shirt, and it says truth, compassion, forbearance. And the guard, the policeman in the back, is actually just watching because it's a political issue, and they just watched basically as the CCP official assaulted the practitioner. In the United States, this individual broke speakers, tore down banners on the street, and he was eventually arrested on hate crime and 2 counts of 4th-degree criminal mischief. This was the practitioner in Australia. She was attending a flower festival, and on top of her car behind her on the left, there was a sign raising awareness about Falun Gong, and it said, the Chinese Communist Party does not represent China and the people. And a 30-year-old Chinese national spray painted her car, obviously, as you can see. And as he was spray painting it, she saw him in the parking lot, and she was trying to prevent him from destroying her car. And he slammed her on the ground and punched and kicked her. And he was fined eventually, and then he went back to China. I don't think the video is going to play, but my last slide is on media control and academic influence. Chinese consulates and proxies have blocked articles to control media narratives about Falun Gong. Confucius Institute, I know there's 2 in India, have teaching contracts that actually include the clause, teacher does not practice Falun Gong. Organization websites like ours and Twitter accounts have faced cyber attacks, and there's been a lot of efforts to silence events and censor information about the CCP's persecution. Just as a last personal example, last week I was at Harvard Medical School to talk about forced organ harvesting, and there were Harvard affiliated professors and Boston, directors of some Boston hospital that actually sent out notices to not attend the event. And he was very friendly to the CCP. And we didn't find out about it until the very last day when a doctor showed that email to us. So I think it's really, heinous how they're trying to control the narrative, but I'm glad everyone now knows what's going on.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I think the tactics that the CCP adopts, not just within China, but also globally in terms of influence, operations, or persecuting people who don't agree with their ideology, seems to be the same everywhere. The examples that you cited, I'm personally aware of several more examples and incidents that have happened globally, including India, by the way. We'll take that up at another time, but now we have to move on to our next speaker, Shelley. Shelley joins us from Auckland in New Zealand. Thank you, Shelley, for joining us. I know it's pretty late in the night in Auckland at this point. I think probably it's about 1:30 a.m. on a Sunday. Thank you for joining, and thank you for your commitment to join here and present this. Make your presentation even at this order in Auckland. Thank you so much. Shelley, the time is yours.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kendra, and everyone attend this forum. And I came from China to New Zealand in 1998, before the persecution. And when I was in China, I was also one of the Democratic Party member. And at that time, I was in charge of the promotion of my party. It's called the 9-3 Association Party. And as soon as I work for that party, and I found whatever we promoted was Communist Party's policy and stuff. And about a month later, I asked my manager, the president actually, and I said, why we only promote, Communist Party's policy instead of our parties? And he said, because financially, our party supported by the Chinese Communist Party, the Great Asian CCP. If we don't promote the Communist Party stuff, you and me won't sit in this role. And I feel so, disappointed. I said, I don't want to work for the Chinese Communist Party. That's the reason I participate in this party. But actually, in China, the Communist Party say we have a democracy, we have a freedom of speech, but actually it is not. The Democratic parties, they have a couple of different parties, but that party is just like a flower in the vase for the, decoration. It's not a really independent party. And when I came to New Zealand, I found a couple of things quite different from mainland China, because in New Zealand, I found almost all of the media can complain the government. At that time, I thought, the journalist, the editor, they are so brave, because if the same thing happened in China, the journalist or editor will be at least punished or jailed. But here, later I found, it is really free country, not so-called free. And another thing I found, like a Tibetan issue, and New Zealand government and people almost all support the Tibetan people. At that time, I thought, why will good people support bad people? Because in China, from a little ago, I was told that, in the school, Tibetan people, they were poor educated people. They committed all sorts of bad deeds. And then I thought, that kind of people were deserved to be punished. So this is the propaganda, because everyone almost know in China, the CCP control all of the media, like Google, Facebook, Twitter, even Gmail, all banned in China. So the brainwashing for the Chinese people over 7 decades. And after Falun Gong, was banned in China in July 1999, so they used all of the media to, deform Falun Gong, and even organ harvesting. I think in this, our peaceful society overseas, people could hardly understand why, the peaceful exercise is banned in China, and severe persecution is there, even organ harvesting. I came from the city near the Dalian, maybe in north part of China. Some people know Dalian, and that happened. Organ harvesting even is systematically done by the bureaucratic officials. I just printed one of the people know anti-corruption campaign, and in this campaign, many government officials jailed, And this published by our newspaper in 2017. 126 people all jailed. This one, he was a former trade minister, and most of them involved in the organ harvesting. He Xilai, he's actually set up a body processing factory in Dalian, my neighbor city, and actually it's a joint venture company. This is the photo of the body processing factory in Dalian. After he was jailed about 2 months, this factory shut down. And in this factory, they made this kind of human body product, and because they cooperated with a European guy, Haggenson. And he did body exhibition globally. So most of the body came from Xilai's factory in Dalian. I just printed a couple of them. And because my computer skill is not good, I just printed and you can have a look. I already sent this file to make a big picture, and maybe later you can share with the audience. In New Zealand, there's one example. Mr. Huang Guohua, his wife died for the persecution. And his wife's name is Luo Zhixiang. I also printed this is her wedding photo. Very beautiful lady. She died on 29-year-old with 3 months boy pregnant. And this is Huang Guohua with his daughter, Kai Xin, and the photo of Luo Zhixiang. They both practice Falun Gong, and they were detained in detention center in 2003. After 2 weeks detention, Luo Zhixiang was persecuted to death. And during this persecution, Luo Zhixiang also did fasting, and the police force feeding her. And about 10 days, they sent her to the hospital, and with 2 male police, 24 hours surveillance her. And 2 days later, they asked her sister come to the hospital. And the sister, before her slept, she just drank a cup of water in the womb and fell asleep. She didn't hear anything, any noise. After she wake up, and the police said her sister jumped out of the building and almost died. She found her sister, that was in the 3rd floor. She found her sister, outside of the building on the street. About a dozen of police and doctors were there. Her sister's still alive. She asked them to, save her sister's life, help, but no one, care about what she said. They just took photo over 1 hour. Finally, they took her sister back to the hospital because she's still alive. Luo Zhixiang's still alive. And she said that because she was there, they put into one of the rooms dozen of police, dozens of doctors were inside, but the door not closed, shut. She just hear her sister screaming seriously, and she opened the door, and the police forced her to another room, and then they transfer her to another hospital. The next day, she was told that her sister Luo Zhixiang died, and then they didn't tell Luo Zhixiang's husband, Mr. Huang Guohua, and he was also detained in the detention center. After 3 months, they told him the wife died. And the police forced the family to sign the document. She did suicide. But the family, the relative, could hardly believe, because Luo Zhixiang, when her sister was in the hospital, she told her sister, she said, I will give the birth to my boy. And also, as a Falun Gong practitioners, our master told us killing, suicide is also a killing, and it's not allowed. But the relative finally signed this kind of document for her suicide. And this is the final picture of Luo Zhixiang in the coffin, and with her daughter and her mother-in-law carry her daughter. Her daughter was a year old. So this is the real sad story. And because in China, a lot of Falun Gong practitioners, tortured, died, even organ harvesting. We not really know the number, as Cynthia already mentioned some details. So this persecution already lasts over 24 years and still happening there every day. I went to Fiji 2 weeks ago, and I showed one of the magazines.
Shelley, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I went to Fiji 2 weeks ago, and in the tourist spot, I showed this magazine to one of the staff about, organ harvesting in China. I asked him whether he knew or not. He said, oh, I knew this. And I asked, how did you know this? And he said, my brother, he's a doctor. He visited China last year. And worked in the hospital with the Beijing, colleague, with the colleagues in Beijing for half a year. And he knows organ harvesting is still happening in China, in Beijing. And he said, it's, many people could hardly believe it's reality. And also many people just, keep blinded, shut their mouths. It's a very, very severe situation in China. And so I do appreciate, Mr. Bickinger organized this forum, and appreciate the people attend this forum, and let more people know what is real happening in China. I think it's almost the time for me. Thank you so much. I return this time for Mr. Pippinger now.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for sharing those examples of how Falun Gong practitioners have been persecuted in China. Thank you so much for that. We now move on to Bharat. Bharat is an Indian. He joins from Bangalore, and he's a practitioner. And He will be sharing with us the status of the practice itself and the practitioners globally today and where it stands today. Bharat, the time is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vipindra. First of all, I'd like to thank you for organizing this and inviting me to be a part of this August gathering. And my earlier speakers, Venus, Cynthia, and Shelley, they have thrown so much light on what the practice is about, how the persecution is happening in China, and what are the various case studies. I hope I'm audible enough, right? To everyone? Yeah. So we are about 10 crore practitioners around the world as of now, and the practice is freely practiced in about 130 plus countries. People from all different backgrounds, religion, belief system, culture, etc., are free to come and learn the practice. One thing that I would like to repeat that others also might have said is Falun Dafa has been totally free of cost, right? And that is one thing that surprises people everywhere. We don't have organizations, we don't have corporate structures like most of the other practices do in society. And that has helped the practice spread far and wide. Even looking at India today, the practice has spread to every major town and city across the country over the last 24 years. And it has been welcomed with open arms everywhere. What I would like to particularly point out, since we are talking about what is happening in China, having understood that China itself had about 100 million people, 10 crore people practicing Falun Dafa when the practice was persecuted on July 20, 1999 and onward. And cracking down such a large group of practitioners and the persecution continuing even today, it is 24 and a half years, 25 years this year since the persecution had started on July 20, 1999. It is very important for us to understand that this requires a very systematic work and maybe billions and billions of dollars being pumped into the system to run a crackdown like this. It's not a small group of people, small group of thugs that you have to put them away, put them in the jail and they shut off. These are spiritual people. These are people who are practicing honesty, compassion, tolerance, and they are fighting this persecution with non-violence by raising awareness around the world and trying to shut down 100 million of these people in their own country, in China, and around the world, trying to shut voices. Because what happened is, after the persecution started, Falun Dafa practitioners in various other countries started taking stands, started raising awareness with their local communities, with their local governments, with their local media. Because what happened is 99 when the persecution started and all the world media would listen to what the Communist Party media said, which was the mouthpiece of the Communist Party. They would also talk badly about Falun Dafa, Falun Gong. So it became very difficult for Falun Dafa practitioners outside China to start raising awareness with these media companies, with local organizations, NGOs, with the UN, with various other things. And slowly, steadily, we have been able to bring about that awareness. Over the last 25 years, I would say 25 years of the persecution this year, dozens of countries have condemned the persecution in their parliament. Many countries have passed laws in their country that ban their citizens from going to China for medical treatment or punish their citizens who go to China for organ transplants. and things like that. There are multiple reports that have been published, documentaries that have been made, a lot of awareness about this coming online. That said, I would also like to say there is not enough awareness yet because the persecution still goes on. And what's hard for me even today to understand is in the 21st century, in the information age. Today, if there is a train accident happening in the other part of the world, I will know it within half an hour, right? What happened, how it happened. And here there is this persecution, inhuman torture, 100 different methods of torture used on these prisoners of conscience, their organs being harvested when they are alive. Such kind of crime happening in the 21st century, in the information age, in the largest country of the world, still going unnoticed, right, is something um, which the people of the world will have to live with in the future when they come to know that something like this happened for so many years and we did not take a stand. Some of the basic misconceptions that are there about this that I would like to clear because of CCP's propaganda on the internet and everywhere. The basic things that they tell is even today, the audience here would go on Google, YouTube, put Falun Gong. There are a lot of articles that would come down talking about Falun Gong is evil, Falun Gong is a cult, Falun Gong makes you go mad, Falun Gong makes you go crazy, it is bad for the society, etc., etc. These are the big misconceptions that you'll find on the internet, which I would say is basically CCP propaganda. And why I say these are misconceptions is me personally, like you said, I have been practicing Falun Dafa for over 15 years. And before this, I was into other spiritual practices. I have read a lot, learned a lot, met a lot of spiritual gurus, read a lot of books. I could feel a lot of energies in my body, right? We talk about healing powers. These are something that I had. And then I learned something like Falun Dafa. And I know the kind of difference it brings to me, right? So the practice basically talks about following truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. And I come from a corporate career, and most of the people in the working professions today talk about how important it is to speak lies, to cheat people, to make more money, etc., etc. But I strive to live by the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. And I still do well in my profession. I still do well in achieving my goals. I still do well in my sales. I still do well in my services. And that gives me more faith in being able to follow these principles. So these principles are definitely good virtues that the practice is teaching. Like I told in the beginning, there is no money that is being taken. And once there is no money being taken, there is no organization. How can it be a cult? How can it be something bad? How can it be evil? This is teaching people to be good, and people's health is improving. It's been 15 plus years. I haven't seen a doctor or taken a medicine. I used to wear specs. My eyesight became normal. And we are like 10 crore practitioners around the world. All of us have different experiences, similar experiences. It's like every practitioner you talk to will give you different experience, right? And a lot of misinformation also. Um, um, like what happens is, like I told you, practitioners around the world started raising awareness about the persecution in their own ways, because various media around the world did not publish rightly about what was happening in China. A few practitioners came together and they said, we will start our own media, we will start our own TV channels, we will start our own newspapers, we will start our own magazines, we will start our own blogs. Some practitioners who were good at art said, we will try to raise awareness through dance, through music, through painting, through fine arts, through producing different songs and albums and movies. And like that, there are so many practitioners around the world who have, through different ways, tried to raise awareness about this inhuman persecution happening in China in their own ways in different sections of the society. And that is how we see today there is so much awareness being raised. So, what also happens is these organizations, perhaps run by practitioners, are based on the values of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. These practitioners live life by those values. They're like, we would want these values to be the backbone of our organizations also. So what happens is, today the CCP would say that these organizations are against CCP. They are mouthpieces of Falun Gong. They want demise of CCP. Okay, things like that. Whereas I can say that we are not getting political here. It is very important to understand we are just against the persecution that is happening to people like us in China. And we want the persecution to stop. But we also believe that if the persecution is going on for such a long time, even after trying to raise this kind of awareness within China, outside China, it is something definitely, for a lack of better word, evil, right? Because something that persecutes goodness in society is evil. So that is the belief most of us have grown into, having seen the persecution for so many years. So us being termed as anti-communist, anti-CCP, or trying to count the days of when the CCP will fall, well, these are not the things that we want. What we are looking for is lift of ban of end the persecution of Falun Gong in China. And the day that happens, it doesn't matter to us whether it is the CCP ruling China, some other government ruling China, or whatever, as long as society accepts us for what we are. A couple more things I would like to share on why this is important for Indians, because I see, since you're also in India and most of the audience here is Indians, this is happening in China. Why should it matter to Indians? Having researched a lot over the last 10-15 years on what the CCP can do, I would only like to tell you this is the tip of the iceberg. If CCP is able to control crores of people in their own country, outside their own country, what they are trying to do today is expand their influence around the world to spread communism everywhere. We would be, we would not be able to handle if the communist power takes over, right? And right now, while that is slowly happening, without us knowing, it is time for us to start seeing it around us, especially from reports like what yourself has published and are coming out with the next report. It is very important for the common man to understand the threats that are coming, especially today in a global world, right? And if CCP continues this, see, what has also happened is, while I'm talking a lot about what happened around the world, I would also like to tell you in a minute about what happened in China. So people inside China also don't like this happening, that their own government is killing their own people. So there was a report that Epoch Times published called the 9 Commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party in 2004, following which there was a quit CCP movement, Dong movement that started in China. And as of today, 40 crore plus, 400 million plus people have already quit the CCP. And I think CCP is counting its days. So it's very important for us around the world to be aware of what is happening, especially when the mainstream media doesn't talk about it, because the threats that we face are beyond our imagination. right? And especially with Falun Gong, we are good people who are being tortured and persecuted. It is very important for people all around the world to support us, raise their voice against this inhuman persecution that is happening, and maybe even try learning this practice because it's a beautiful practice, right? It is only helping you improve your health. It is showing you a spiritual path. It is making you become a good person in society. You become a happy person. How many people today are happy, right? We are all in our own stress and pressure and work and juggling between so many things in life, right? This practice brings happiness to us, and that is what it does, right? I think I spoke a lot. Maybe we can talk more next time, but if you have questions, we can take few.
Thank you, Bharat. I think we may say that we want to be apolitical, but let me tell you, being apolitical is also a political stand, and it's not that just because somebody is apolitical, the Communist Party of China is not going to come and crack down on you. They will crack down on you if even for a minute they think that you are not serving their interests. So that's what has happened to Falun Gong, because once a person becomes spiritual, probably they will move out of communism itself. And that's precisely what is, I believe, is threatening. And this was actually a question that I wanted to ask. What actually made the CCP think that Falun Gong is a threat to the CCP itself? Probably Cynthia will be able to answer that question. But I thought even while you were making your presentation, I got the answer to it, to this question, because I think the Communist Party of China thinks if spirituality spreads, if goodness spreads, probably the CCP, which is actually a evil force, will demise, will have a death in China. Probably that's what is. Am I right, Cynthia? Is that conclusion right based on what
It's a
presentation
good,
you did?
it's a very accurate conclusion. I would actually add that in some sense, the whole reason the Cultural Revolution happened and the whole reason why those decades, were trying to get rid of the old and get rid of tradition. The CCP really tried to position itself as the highest power. They were trying to get rid of the divine so that people only believed in the CCP. And this is obvious in elementary school. Like every elementary kid has to wear like a red scarf, and it's basically the flag tied around their necks. What could be more symbolic than that, And then, they say that in their morning assembly, they say the CCP is their mother. The CCP is, and they like have like an oath basically every single morning. And so in that sense, I really think because Falun Gong does believe in the divine, they do believe in spirituality, there was a sense of hope and a sense of belief that, maybe the CCP is wrong. And that in itself, I think was the, I guess the crack and the last straw for the CCP. But obviously, in my view, from history, it was only the head of the CCP who ordered it. There were ministers and some families of officials who practiced at that time because the government really supported it. Consulates around the world actually were teaching meditation. Like they invited Teacher Lee to go to Paris to teach it in their embassy in the 90s. And so it was actually just Jiang Zemin who really orchestrated the whole campaign, and the people who followed him, were just scapegoats in that sense.
Yeah, thank you so much there, Cynthia. And I believe if the Communist Party of China can declare and call His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a terrorist, probably nobody in the world is a non-terrorist by the definition of the CCP. So Falun Gong practitioners, yoga practitioners, any practitioner who has a spiritual bent of mind is a terrorist as per the CCP. I think that's what the Communist Party of China wants everybody to believe. So okay, there was a very fundamental question that I had. Probably Venus can enlighten me on this particular issue. Venus, is Falun Falun Gong practice very similar to the yoga practice or the yoga asana practice that Indians do? Because I believe when you say Falun Gong and Falun Dafa, they are two different things, which is, I mean, they are the part of the same, but essentially Falun Dafa means exercises, which is equivalent to the yogasanas. And am I understanding correct here, Venus?
So basically, yoga is an umbrella term. Within the yoga, you have many, many schools. And then you can say that yoga actually teaches you not just the exercises, like they say, okay, just doing the physical movements is not sufficient if your mind is full of filthy, bad thoughts and all kind of things. So yoga will not give you any benefit. I think this fundamental, you can say, is similar. However, Falun Gong is a different, a school of spiritual discipline. And the 5 set of exercises that are done, some people say, okay, do they look like calisthenics? Is it something like, some kind of all these new, like, I think yoga is in the West now, they're talking about all kind of yogas. But fundamentally, if you see the traditional yogas, they're very different. Falun Gong, the 5 exercises, they're very slow rhythmic movements. You can't say that they are the same as any branch of yoga that is taught in India. And I think the yoga masters in India also would say that, their yoga, which is coming in a traditional lineage, and that is what I mean is very important, which is coming since ancient times in a traditional lineage, is very unique. So similarly, Falun Gong, which is also known as Falun Dafa, Gong is the cultivation energy, or it's a discipline. So Falun Gong, Falun Dafa is the term for the same discipline. Dafa is the universal law of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, or Satya, Karuna, Sahanshilta in Hindi. So Dafa means the universal law. Falun is the law wheel. The law wheel in Indian terms can be translated as Dharma Chakra, but it is not the Dharma Chakra which comes from the Buddhist discipline. The Falun or the law wheel in Falun Gong is different. And Falun Gong, so the term Falun comes from that. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a very fundamental question. A lot of people, our audience, and the people who are going to be viewing this
Also, it
video
is
will have.
believed that in a different era, in the prehistory, Falun Gong was passed on in a single master teacher lineage. It's in this era that it is given to the public in mass.
Right, I got it. Thank you.
This concept of lineage is present in the Indian tradition as well.
Right. Thank you so much. So I had a question for Cynthia. Essentially, when we talk about all these persecution, the human rights violation that happens, essentially the CCP or the Communist China turns back and says that this is all propaganda by the Falun Gong practitioners and that the data is not true. I mean, they try to discredit whatever data you put out. So how do you essentially collect your data and how authentic are these, and how do people essentially know that this is quite an authentic data and information that we have?
Really quick, just first, one of the ministers in 2015, Huang Jiefu, he was the Ministry of Health, I believe. He was in charge of hospitals around China, and in 2015, he actually made the statement saying that, death row prisoners are not used for organ donation anymore. And what he was basically trying to say was they did use prisoners as organ donors before, but now they've stopped. And I would actually like to ask the question back towards the CCP, where's your evidence? Because all they've done is press conferences. All they've done is all of these shows of, in media or other places. They've translated and tried to spread this, but they haven't really shown any evidence. And then on the part of, Falun Dafa Information Center, we were actually established in 2000, and my manager, he went to Tiananmen Square in the early 2000s, and he appealed. And as an American, as a foreigner, he was actually detained with dozens of others. And so this is something that has been a lived experience. I myself have visited my grandparents in China since I was a young kid. And I have also been under surveillance by police, even though I'm an American citizen. So I think with just personal experience, and also when we document these cases, it's very systematic. We have them split by the provinces, and then there's over 20 provinces in China. And we don't include Hong Kong or Taiwan because Hong Kong was a recent thing. And Article 23 hasn't passed, but that's another issue. So we split them by provinces. We document them by age, by name, and it has to be verified by someone else, either a family member or several family members. Most of the cases used to be published on the Chinese justice system. There was a website, I think it was like CPJ, but recently they've scraped all of those and erased a lot of the former court cases. So you can't even tell how many cases there are anymore. So now it's just based on personal testimony. We also collect the date, and then when there's mass arrests, we'll put those together. So usually if that happens, we know that it's like a campaign, like a targeted campaign. We also track very belated cases. And a lot of times, I would say like 5 to 10% of the cases that we have this year are actually collected from previous years, because the people who were sentenced didn't have family members anymore, or people didn't know where they went and they just disappeared in the middle of the night from their homes. So after they're done with their sentence, like 5, 8, 10 years later, they come out and then they recount their experience. They send that information out of the Great Firewall through VPNs. They publish either on Minghui, or they somehow get it to people outside of China. And we also compile those. There's also personal interviews that I've done in the past 2 years on forced organ harvesting, and practitioners who believe that either their family members or they themselves were almost forced organ harvested. That's a lot of information. There's a lot of cases there, but I think that's the essence of how we collect our data.
Thank you, Cynthia. This question is essentially to establish the authenticity of the work that we are doing. This is essentially for that question was for that purpose, not to and to also discredit the CCP propaganda against Falun Gong and practitioners, essentially. So one last question I have, and I want each of the 4 panelists to take about 30 seconds to answer this question, because it's a very important question, and we'll go in the reverse order with Bharat, then Shelly, and then Cynthia, and then Venus speaking on this for 30 seconds each, because we are almost at the end of our time for the show, for the event. Okay, what do you think the world needs to do to stop this persecution of the Falun Gong by the Communist Party of China? That's my question. 30 seconds each, please. Bharat, you can go first.
Well, 2 things. The simplest thing, what every individual can do, go online, sign a petition. There is a petition on nccp.com. Everyone here can go to nccp.com. It just takes a minute. Sign a petition. When millions and millions of signatures around the world are collected, we can put more pressure on world governments to put pressure on China. That is what individuals, citizens can do. 2, very quickly, people in power, right? What they can do is they can put pressure on the current government, especially in India right now. We are in that India-China clash, and this is a topic of discussion that has to start happening in the government level discussions between India and China. China has a lot of pressure from various other countries. India should start talking about this too.
Right. Thank you, Bharat. Cynthia? Sorry, Shelly. Shelly, what should the world do to stop this persecution of Falun Gong practitioners?
I think everyone will, come to your representative like MP and raise their awareness of the persecution in China, and also maybe approach it to the media. And today, media actually should play a very important role, raise people's awareness of this kind of persecution. I think that this may be the two efficient ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelly. And before I move on to Cynthia, there are a lot of links that have been put up by Venus and others, Cynthia and others, regarding the issues that they have talked about today. I'm going to be waiting for all of you to go there and take a look at it. I will not end the program immediately after we have completed it, so that you are able to download those links first. And after that, I'll end this show. Okay, with that, I want to move on to Cynthia. What does the world need to do?
I also have two things. One, I would personalize your, I think, awareness raising. I think if you have a family member who needs an organ, and they're considering China potentially because they've been recommended by their doctor or someone that they know to go to China, just keep this in mind. And even if you can't convince them entirely, just like let them know that this is happening. This could be a threat. This could kill potentially an innocent person. I think if you're in media, and you see Tibetan repression, things going on in Hong Kong, things going on with other religious minorities in China, just also remember Falun Gong, remember that it's the largest persecution in China. All of the tactics used on Falun Gong in the past are starting to spread to other groups and starting to obviously go across its borders. So those are my recommendations.
Thank you, Cynthia. Venus?
The most important thing is open your mind, learn about the true nature of CCP, its agendas, learn how it's impacting your mind, yourself. The CCP's tactics, its gray war zone tactics are so that every human being's mind is being converted into a war zone. So understand what its true nature is, and to do that, there are two recommendations. One is to read the 9 commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party, which is available online, and you can also order the book, on Amazon if you want. Second is The Evil Spectre of Communism. This book is also available online. You can buy it from various platforms, or you can also, watch the podcast and watch the YouTube documentaries, which are by the same names. We'll be sharing the links and you can spread them across. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venus. And my own recommendation is the democracies of the world needs to stand up to the CCP and also tell them on its face, name and shame them for the persecution that they've been committing, the human rights violations that they've been committing, not just to the Falun Gong practitioners, but also to the Uyghurs in East Turkestan. I don't call it as Xinjiang, I call it as East Turkestan, which is its original name. To the Tibetans, to the Mongolians, and all others, who are currently under the thumb of the Communist Party of China. And let's learn more about what the Communist Party of China is capable of and make ourselves aware of this. With these words, I want to thank some of the participants, especially the Secretary General of Law and Society Alliance, who's a practicing lawyer advocate from Mumbai, Mr. Kumar Vaidyanathan. He has joined us today. I want to thank him because without his support and help, Law and Society Alliance's activities are not possible. I want to thank him for his presence and also for his guidance and support from time to time. I also want to recognize the presence of Law and Society Alliance members, Ankur Goy, who has joined from Assam, and several others who are here. And also want to personally thank my good friends, Venus, Shelly, Bharat, and Cynthia for joining the session and sharing your knowledge and and wisdom on this particular subject. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your wisdom. And I thank all of you for joining today. With this, we'll end the show. We are right on time. We have 1 more minute to go, but still we'll end the program. I'll wait for 1 more minute so that all participants are able to look at the links that our participants have shared today. With that, I thank you very much. One question that was asked by Dr. Vipin Modegowder has been answered by Cynthia in the chat box. You may have take a look at that too. With that, I thank everybody for joining. Have a nice day. For people who are joining, say from Auckland, good night. And the rest of you enjoy your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Venus. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bharat, for joining.
Thank you
And
so
We
much.
much appreciate you organize this forum.
thank you very much. It's a pleasure. We'll come back again on the 25th anniversary of the crackdown that started in 1999. We'll come back again and discuss more issues on this subject. I promise you that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Venus. Thank you very much.
See
Bye,
you.
Cynthia.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Shelly. Bye. Bye. On time, we are ending it. Bye. See you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Pradnya. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining.